Welcome friends and neighbors from near and far to the next project. This is episode 6 of my unofficial my learning curve build, part of the Great Guitar Build Off 21, which is well over. A lot of people are almost done with their 22 builds, or maybe are done with their 22 builds. I'm still working on 21. But this is my Gretsch inspired big body guitar learning curve build. And it's starting to look like a guitar finally. Put binding on it in this episode, here, there, everywhere. Some pickup cavities cut in to the top, body, whatever you want to call it. Got the bridge placement figured out, three-way switch hole poked in it, single volume control, no other controls happening. Got the neck fit to the body, so the neck is now ready for final sanding and prep for finish. And the body is getting close to being ready to receive a back. So we're getting closer. Let's take a look at what's happening as we continue the next project. As we get started on things, it is time to do some humidity control and seal the inside of the body. Because once the back gets glued on, there's not going to be much I can do to protect the inner veneers. Adding some tape to the areas that I don't want the wipe-on poly to be painted over, such as the f-holes and any areas where I'll be gluing the top to the back. I started this process by transferring a center line from the fingerboard to the tenon, doing some measurements to make sure everything is roughly centered, and then use some sharp chisels for a change to do some paring away of wood to get things reasonably uniform. Did, well, maybe not my best work, but some pretty good work. Getting the neck aligned to the body, using the center line from the fingerboard and the center line on the body to figure out where I need to stick the template to cut a mortise into the body. I'm at the point where I am ready to cut a receiving hole in the body to take the tenon from the neck. And I used a piece of household like sewing thread and center marks on the fingerboard, and also a center line on the body to make sure that I got the neck in line with the body, running true and straight. I also have a builder or contractor laser. Red laser that I've used only once. Although it's very handy and visible, I don't find it to be very precise. On something this size, the width of the beam from the laser leaves a lot of room for interpretation. Whereas if you pull a piece of like sewing thread really fine for your center line, it can be very, very precise, and it only costs like $1. I'm ready to start cutting in here. I measured 3 or 4 times, so I'm sure to have something wrong. But let's make some sawdust and then figure out how to fix it. I'm actually wondering, why don't I have a face shield for this? Pretty straightforward routing here. I used a template for the initial 1/2 to 3/4 inch of cut, and then removed the template and used the actual cut in the body as my guide. I'm using a
what is it, a door hinge bit. I think they also call it a mortise bit, but it's a small 1/2 inch diameter cut, 1/4 inch shank. Has a slight spiral to it. I should post a little picture of it right here. That'd be nice. And doing a little more paring on the neck to get everything to fit properly. Doing just a little finesse whittling to round over the mating surface of where the neck ties into the top of the body here. There's going to be a little more refinement done to this, but just trying to get a feel for how it's going to look. I think it's going to be okay.
You're probably wondering, what are you doing? Don't put screws in here. This is a glue-on neck, not a mechanically fastened neck. And you're right, this will be a glued-in neck. This is just temporary. This is my extra set of hands, so I can make sure everything is in alignment. I can get my neck angle more easily set up this way, so the strings will meet the bridge in the right place, and get my neck alignment set up good so the center line of the neck will meet the center line of the bridge. And I can check my fit of the neck to the body in various places. It's really, an extra set of hands or 2 extra set of hands, and it looks good too. It also gives me the option to run out in the yard and say, "Get off my yard!" But I don't do that because it's not my yard. Let's continue to the next project.
A little more routing work going on here. Again, using that 1/2 inch diameter cut, door hinge mortise bit. Has a slight spiral to it. And taking about 1/8 of an inch deep cut per pass. A little bit deeper on the outside where the ears of the pickup sit down in for the height adjustment screws.
I have the first pickup cavity cut at the neck position, and I didn't have to go real deep because of the style of this guitar. The neck sits pretty proud of the body, so the pickup doesn't have to be recessed real deep. I cut about a 3/8 inch deep trench all the way around, just slightly deeper where the adjustment screws for the pickup ride on the outside of the cavity. Now it's time for the bridge pickup cavity to be cut, and as I'm looking at it, I'm kind of going, this could be a bit of a problem with that trestle brace system, because where it's located will be just ahead of my posts that will go right here, which is fine, but even though I don't have to go very deep with my cuts, I'm thinking it is going to route away a lot of the structure, the strength of these ribs right here, these runners, ribs, rails, whatever they are. Maybe not ideal, but I'm thinking these really aren't for top support as much as they are for anti-feedback control or feedback control. So we'll see. I may have to go in and glue in a little patch just to help if I feel it needs it to stiffen up the top, but I doubt it because there's going to be 2 posts right here which are going to support the top and back, and the pickup's really just going to be floating. We're learning. Let's continue the next project.
With every project, there is a time that arrives when I change the plan, and this is that time. I had originally planned to place the bridge blacktop pickup actually close to the bridge, but then I thought about it and moved it forward toward the neck. This is not a new idea. I didn't invent it, and there are reasons for it, and I did some testing. I have my guitar pickup test mule that I use. Did some experimenting with that, and it seemed to work okay. Obviously, it does change the sound, the tone of the bridge pickup a bit by moving its location. But after I made the hole cut and everything, my stomach started bothering me. It was thinking, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Well, we'll find out. And maybe it was just gas. Using my version 3 router binding contraption that I made almost 2 years ago. Maybe it's been more than 2 years ago. Have version 4 on the drawing board still, but probably will never get around to it. This one needs a little tweaking, but overall it works pretty well. And applying the binding to the channel now, using acetone as the glue. Typically I use CA or super glue, but since this is going to be a dyed or stained top, I wanted to be sure that I didn't get any super glue in the end grain or dripped all over the top. Acetone is pretty forgiving, really doesn't stain the wood at all, and it will typically allow stain or dye to do their job without repelling them. We're going to find out as we get closer and closer to adding some color to this thing. The binding glue up went really well, and as I was pulling the tape off, everything looked good except for a couple little spots. I went back, added a little more acetone, and retaped it, trying to pull the binding a little tighter to the body. Jürgen Zoller asked that I do kind of a good overview of how I did the binding in the F-holes, and I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Ooh, gosh, actually, I guess I can't. I don't have much good footage of me doing the F-hole binding. A lot of it is a good shot of the top of my head or my elbows or my shoulders, or my hands are in the way. So we're going to have to suffer through watching this. Basically what I did was pre-laminate the 2 layers of binding together, and as the acetone was still wet between the pieces of binding, I pushed the piece of binding into the F-hole template that I used to cut the F-holes into the body. That helped pre-bend the binding to the rough shape of the F-holes. So then I used acetone to glue the binding into the F-holes and a lot of tape. And here I'm kind of paring the oversized binding away using a straight edge razor blade. A little bit later I'll also be using a cabinet scraper, which I don't know why I haven't used those for this in the past. It worked really well. I just wasn't thinking. There's a cabinet scraper, pulling off nice little curls of binding, and it goes fast. It's a lot less work than using a razor blade. So for this type of binding scraping, a cabinet scraper works really well. gonna blow through the electronics quick because doing video work on electronics is about like watching paint dry. It's not much fun. It's a little boring. And it's hard to really show how much work it really is without putting people to sleep. I wouldn't want to watch it. I think looking at a good schematic might tell you more than actually watching me solder things together anyway. But this project went pretty well. We're gonna find out soon if it even works. I don't know. Here we're checking the value of a couple components. They'll be soldered together and used as a treble bleed on the volume pot. I didn't have an orange drop capacitor, so I used a Chinese teardrop capacitor and 150K resistor with it. Thank you everybody for sticking with me again through this video, and we're taking some ghostly look inside the body. This is what it will look like if you could see in black and white, and we're really small enough to crawl inside the body. Next I'll be gluing the back onto the top and sides, so that's going to be exciting. It'll be happening any moment now. Take care of yourselves, those around you. Thanks again for sticking with me. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do a dance, all that fun stuff. Until next time, take care.